In this week's drive, we salute a legend, see a car we'll never drive, drive one some will never see, and play with some boys' toys. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start with the NASCAR round at Brooklyn in Michigan, USA, for the Sirius Satellite Radio 400, race number 15 on the intense 36-event calendar. The race was started by actor Dan Aykroyd, and Dale Jarrett took the early lead ahead of Michael Waltrip. The first half of the race was relatively uneventful, with 6 lead changes and 1 caution flag. But the excitement progressed as the drivers entered the final stages.
He jumps to the high side at the start-finish line. We saw this yesterday in the ARCA race. That second line, you keep that momentum up, carry that speed down that back straightaway.
With under 30 of the 400 miles remaining, Matt Kenseth, who had battled back and forth over the final third of the race, appeared to gain the edge on a pit stop for fuel. He and Jimmy Johnson dived in for a splash and dash.
There's going to be no tires. She's going to go with no tires. This is exactly the strategy.
Kenseth's crew got him back out in under 3 seconds, and he seemed on track for an easy victory. But with 6 laps to go, Elliott Sadler crashed and NASCAR stopped the race to clean up the debris. The pits opened after 7 minutes, but Kenseth, Johnson and Ryan Newman stayed out on old tires. Early leader Jarrett and others pitted for fresh tires, putting them well back but giving them faster cars. Jarrett, 11th at the restart, past Newman with 1 lap to go, was on Kenseth's bumper. But Kenseth kept Jarrett behind him as he crossed the finish line with Newman third.
Father said, you know, I'll buy a race car and drive it if you work on it.
Water conditions were very rough for the third round of the UIM Formula One Powerboat World Championship at Helsinki in Finland. Watched by a crowd estimated at 50,000, the fleet of 24 lightweight 16-foot carbon fiber boats from 15 nations raced around a tight, unpredictable 1,840-meter course at speeds topping 225 kilometers an hour. The incident-packed 60-lap Grand Prix saw many of the top names crash out of contention before the race had reached the halfway stage. Within 2 laps, pole setter Fabio Comparato had dropped out with engine failure. Reigning world champion Guido Capellini was staying out of trouble. Laps into the race, American Scott Gilman and local hero Pertti Lepala piled into each other. Rescue teams got the drivers out of their stricken vessels and back to the pits. 20 laps later, world champ Capellini appeared to run into Russian backmarker Stanis Kortsanovsky, and both retired from the event. Once early leader Capellini had dropped out, Frenchman Felipe Desetene took over the lead. Italy's Massimo Ruggiero held 3rd place to the end. Saudi Arabian Leith Ferreran clinched 2nd place, having chased the leader all the way. Desetene completed the event in 59 minutes. Despite not finishing the race, Capellini still leads the championship on 40 points, with Desetene moving into 2nd with 26. A statue of Juan Manuel Fangio was unveiled to celebrate the 75th birthday of the Nürburgring in Germany. Argentina's Fangio won the German Grand Prix at the track in 1954, 1956 and 57. His last win, driving a Maserati, was particularly notable as it involved him taking a 2-minute pit stop. McLaren Mercedes drivers David Coulthard and Kimi Räikkönen performed the unveiling. Fangio won the world drivers' title an unequalled 5 times, claiming 24 wins from just 51 starts. He won the title for Alfa Romeo, Maserati, Mercedes and Ferrari. Mercedes-Benz have established a motorsport museum at the track, and Coulthard appreciates the history there.
Absolutely, I think that Mercedes-Benz's contribution to motorsport is there for everyone to see. So for us to come here to the Nürburgring 75 years after this circuit was founded is I think a big achievement for Mercedes-Benz and motorsport. I'm very proud to be part of that current program as a Mercedes-Benz driver, and I have been for well over 100 Grand Prix. So you can't help but feel the history. I'm standing here beside one of I think it's 1934 car, and it's just incredible.
The Mercedes contribution to motorsport spans most of the last century, and the new museum contains many priceless cars from both the racetrack and the street. Coulthard's realistic about this season, but hopeful that things will change.
Well, I think that obviously we're having a less than competitive season this year relative to others, but nonetheless we've obviously managed to win in Monaco and had a podium in Canada and also in Barcelona.
Fangio's 1954 win was behind the wheel of a Mercedes, the one featured in the new statue. His last world title in 1957 came at the age of 46. Fangio died in 1995, aged 84. From 4 wheels to 2 now as we head to Krško in Slovenia for the 4th round of the World Speedway Championship. 10,000 fans watched the first Grand Prix to be held at the Krško Malaya Gupsa Stadium. Ryan Sullivan of Australia scored his maiden win in Wales at the last round and started as favourite after the shock elimination of Sweden's Tony Rickardsson in the semis earlier in the evening. In the Welsh round, Sullivan, riding with the blue helmet, was able to grab the lead by taking extremely wide lines on his Java. But this time the canny Australian altered his lines on every lap. Poland's Tomasz Golob, wearing the white helmet, harried Sullivan and appeared to snatch the lead several times. Sullivan was able to hold on by the slenderest margin as Golob wrestled his bike on the final straight, crossing the line with his wheel a foot in the air. 3rd place went to Britain's Mark Lauren and 4th to Andrea Johnson of Sweden. In the overall standing, Sullivan now holds a 12-point lead over Tony Rickardsson, but the next round is in Stockholm, the Swedes' home Grand Prix. The 4th round of the Outdoor Trials World Championship was held in the beautiful but tiny country of Andorra. Albert Cabastany of Spain handed world champion Dougie Lampkin his 2nd defeat of the year, beating out the Englishman on the first day. Albert picked up just 42 penalties in the 15 sections. Lampkin had to settle for 2nd place on the Saturday after repairs to a rear wheel puncture cost him valuable points. But he was back to his best for the 2nd day and cruised to victory. His nearest rival picked up 10 penalties more than he did. Adam Raga would take that second place with 33 penalty points. It was quite a turnaround for the Spaniard, who had finished in 9th place on the Saturday. Honda rider Takahisa Fujinami finished in 3rd place on both days. He went close to taking 2nd place on Sunday, but incurred 34 penalty points, just one more than Raga. The 2-day total put Raga in 2nd behind Lamkin, with Fujinami 3rd. That leaves the man from Japan trailing Lamkin by 29 championship points in 2nd place in the overall standings. Lamkin increased his lead by 7 to 154. Kabastani is 3rd and Raga 4th. Unsal in France hosts the 5th round. Meanwhile, the motocross circus travelled to Bulgaria, where they raced in searing heat. In the 500cc race, Joel Smets, the factory KTM rider, caught and passed early leader Javier Garcia Vico and built a 3-second lead. But Vico, also on a works KTM, never gave up the chase and cut Smets' advantage with 3 laps to go. The Spaniard lined up the Belgian for a pass until Smets swung across aggressively to block his rival and crossed the line a second ahead, ending 2 months of misery and a 4-race barren spell to notch his 3rd win of the season. In the 250cc race, Michael Pichon overtook Fred Bolley and Andrew McFarlane to take the lead by the end of the first lap. He then kept a comfortable distance from Bolley and eased away to a 9-second race-winning margin. At one point, it looked as though Bolley on the factory Yamaha might get close enough to challenge the Suzuki rider, but Pichon dictated the pace from the front. Pichon has equalled the most wins by a French rider, 20 by Sébastien Tortelli, and has taken 6 victories from 7 starts this season. Racing at the hottest time of the day, many riders in the 125cc class simply couldn't cope with the 40-degree heat. Triple X World Champion Alex Puzar and his Husqvarna beat off early leader Ben Townley and a late surge from Philippe Dupasquier to win his first Grand Prix since Spain in 1998. Dupasquier was so exhausted after his charge from 13th to 2nd that he almost collapsed walking to the podium. Steve Ramon, riding with an injured foot, made it as high as 3rd, but passed out on the pit wall and was hospitalised with exhaustion. Ben Townley claimed his 3rd rostrum this year, but the 17-year-old New Zealander had to be escorted from the press conference, barely able to walk. Built with a driver in mind, Volvo have packed the latest in high technology into their $10 million concept car, the SCC2, offering a glimpse into the future of driving. Lead engineer Austin Strandberg explains how cars will adjust to their drivers in future.
If you know where the driver is sitting, you can design the car from that position, meaning that if you have your eyes here, you can design everything that he sees as good as possible out of the car, but also in the car.
The car has an eye sensor that adjusts the driver's seat and controls to their optimum position. Sensors and cameras are embedded in door mirrors and front and rear bumpers to help eliminate blind spots and warn of possible collisions. Adaptive lighting monitors road speed and steering and moves the lamps to shine round corners. Built-in night vision uses an infrared camera to improve night driving, illuminating invisible or hard-to-see obstacles. The car is designed with see-through pillars that give the driver an uninterrupted view of the road. Though the SCC2 will probably not make it into production, Volvo says that many of its potentially life-saving features will. This is good news for Volvo's parent company, Ford, which has struggled with safety issues linked to the Firestone tyre problem. Volvo says you can expect to see some of this technology across the entire Ford lineup, including Jaguar and Land Rover, in as soon as 2 years. Our next story is in Australia. This is a koala. It's not a bear, but a marsupial. This is a Holden Monaro. Both look cute, seem pretty lazy, are heavier than you'd expect, and have real claws. You might not have seen this car before, but depending upon where you live, there's a good chance that you might soon. In its original form, it's a Holden Monaro, but various other countries will see this big beast as a Chev Lumina SS, and it will be sold in America as a Pontiac GTO. Holden is the Australian arm of General Motors, and the Monaro is the new two-door coupe now being built down under. For many years, Holden and its Ford rival have produced unique models for Australia, big front-engine rear-drive saloons with large and lazy 6 or V8 engines. Now Holden have turned their four-door Commodore into the two-door Monaro, and they're selling up a storm in the Middle East, with several other markets on the radar too. The Monaro is big and heavy. It's 4.8 metres long, 1.8 metres wide, and it weighs 1,645 kilograms, over 1.5 tonnes. The Monaro's handling isn't going to cause any headaches in European design studios. This Australian has American roots, and its big, heavy body doesn't make quick decisions, but it does arrive at corners with a great deal of inertia. The car was born out of an after-hours project by about a dozen enthusiastic engineers at Holden. Working in top secret, unpaid and largely unbeknownst to Holden and GM management, they built a one-off concept car which was first seen at the Sydney Motor Show in 1998. Local pressure to put the new coupe into production was intense, and pretty soon senior GM executives started seeing it as a possible flagship front-engine rear-wheel drive muscle car. As a result of this global focus, the Monaro gets Chev's 225 kilowatt 5.7 litre alloy V8 rather than the regular 5 litre 180 kilowatt engine that Holden fits into its Commodore. There's also a supercharged 171 kilowatt V6 version too, and transmission choices are a 4-speed auto or a 6-speed manual. The CV8 is fitted with monster 18 by 8-inch alloy wheels and 235/40 R18 Bridgestone tyres, which were grippy to a point, but not surprisingly gave a harsh ride on anything but smooth surfaces, with quite a bit of tyre rumble getting through to the cabin. But the Monaro is much more than a four-door with two doors welded up. There's very little which has been carried over from the Commodore. It has a shorter wheelbase and 100mm less overhang, and it's wider too. Body stiffness is up 23%, with torsional rigidity up 5%, while the doors themselves are 150mm longer, part of the 80 revised body panels in the new design. Only the bonnet, front fenders and door handles are carried over from the family four-door. The styling cues are not subtle with red-faced instruments. The red line is 5,500 RPM and only 220 km an hour is envisaged. The reach and rake adjustable wheel has an airbag and controls for the sound system, but not much space for big fingers. The leather electric seats have Mercedes-style controls and 3 memories on the driver's side. An auto-on lights function is a useful feature. This car had a VDO Dayton satellite navigation system fitted, but the auto gear lever gets in the way when it's in park.
Louder. Softer. Softer.
Our car also had the Intellimatics emergency system built into the self-dipping electrochromic rearview mirror. The neat dash layout is wrapped in a shiny bit of plastic that reflects glare, shows the dust and scratches easily. Monaro comes with switchable traction control, a limited slip differential, 4-channel ABS and 4 airbags, but you still need to wear your safety belt for them to work properly. Access to the rear seat is awkward, but better than most two-doors. But the electric seat moves forward slowly and then doesn't return automatically. Very frustrating for the front seat passenger or driver. Door trim is smooth leather with suede down below, all colour keyed to the seats and the exterior colour. The front seats are form-hugging and very supportive during cornering and have adjustable lumbar support. This is the only way to open the boot. The boot is okay for a sporty car, but arcs of the hinge arms intrude and steal space, so it won't take lots of luggage. The boot also houses the satellite navigation's brain and a 10 CD stacker, and there's a space-saver spare wheel under the floor. But it's up the other end that the good bits are to be found. The Chevy 5.7 litre engine, which powered early suggestions the Monaro could easily be the new Camaro. Trouble is, it's not just the mechanical parts which are hidden by that vast plastic cover. The good old days of rumbling V8s seem to have gone too. This just doesn't sound like a big-inch V8 muscle car. Don't worry, that's just steam. When last did you see a modern car with a retractable aerial? The performance of the Monaro is pretty much what you'd expect from a big car with a big V8 engine. Irresistible in a languid sort of way. The car goes much faster than it sounds, but with the traction control switched off, things can get very unruly indeed. The V8 spins at barely more than an idle at 100 kilometers an hour, but the 4-speed automatic gearbox responds immediately to the throttle. Subtle is not a word which applies. The Monaro is certainly distinctive and powerful. Built for countries with big horizons, it will be showing up in more and more places over the next few years, no matter what names end up on that rounded boot. It's no secret that some kids' toys are worth a small fortune, a generation on. What must a collection of unused prototype toys be worth? After 40 years, the former chief designer at Corgi Cars has decided to part with his unique collection of models. Responsible for some 3,000 designs, which included such classics as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the Bond Aston Martin complete with ejection seat, and the Lotus Moonraker model, Marcel van Kliemput feels he's now lost interest in worldly goods. Marcel has also decided to sell his collection of original design drawings, but his memories are interesting too.
The one that failed was a model of the new Range Rover which was going to be launched, which we agreed we would launch the model simultaneously. We had all our molds and tools finished. We produced 3 first shots off the tools, and then Rover decided not to release the car. And that was a very well kept secret for at least 20 years.
Corgi Cars were launched by Britain's Met Toy Company in 1956 and became the first serious threat to the universal success of dinky toys, with features such as opening doors and even some headlights that actually lit up. Over the years, Marcel's showcase became extremely cramped. After his children had picked what they wanted, he thought he would sell the rest at Sotheby's auction house.
As I started doing the first model, the drawings of the first model, I realised it was going to be a very vast ongoing range. So I told the directors I'd like one model of each one which I designed. And consequently, when the company went bust, I designed about 1,000 models. So I had 1,000 models in my loft, so to speak.
The designs came from real cars. Corgi was always ready with accurate miniatures and some artistic improvements. It's not known how much the collection will fetch. However, the gold Aston Martin, which originally sold for around 34 pence, is expected to fetch £2,000. We'll end this week on that small but lucrative note. But so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.